Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
5-4. Back at you in Gloves Off. I'm Paul Buitron, and today I have candidate Ed Cabrera, who is running for U.S. Congress against Enrique, and many others that are running on board that race. But we want to hear from Ed to see why does he want to run. You know, why does he want to get involved and really find out. And let's get to meet him. All right, Ed.
Pleasure, Paul.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for the
And
invitation.
thank you for coming out, and also, thank you for running, because it takes somebody special to write their name on a dotted line. Okay, and then all of a sudden for you to go out there and knock doors and everything else that you do. But I guess the main question that we're going to start, we'll get off for a little bit, is like, why? Why would you want to just jump in board? Why?
Paul, I'm a very fortunate man. I've had a great experience. I'm 61 years old, and I've got a beautiful wife. I've got a beautiful life. But in the last several years, my neighborhood, my community of ranchers has been impacted dramatically by the several issues, the border crisis being the major one. And we've become concerned. The direction of this country in the last several years has taken a sharp turn. And given my background, I'm a Cuban immigrant. I'm concerned that we're heading in a direction that my parents left. And I've made a commitment to do the best I can to reverse that trend that we're seeing. So I'm running under the Republican flag, the brand, and my focus really is to help the community locally and then make sure that the country doesn't go in a direction that we can't return to. They say that socialism is won through the vote, and the only way you're going to get it out is through guns. So I don't want to get to that point again in my life.
You made some interesting comments about socialism is won through a vote, and you have to get out of it through a gun. And it's absolutely true. It's happened everywhere else. In fact, it's going to happen in Venezuela, and it's happening in countries that people have forgotten that many countries, their constitution was basically copied from the American Constitution, especially all of Latin America. And at one time or another, because of being afraid of guns, being afraid of that tool, they have removed the Second Amendments of somewhat in whatever category they were placed on, and made the people defenseless. And when you make people defenseless, all of a sudden you get people that are very abusive. Can that happen in the United States? It can. Will it happen? I don't know. There's still a lot of people out there that are going to put their foot down and say it's not today, not in my generation. So that being said, the immigration problem is a problem. Okay, more so now than ever. But this is a problem that's been going on for 20, 30, 40 years. We have a ranch in Zavala County. The family does. 3 weeks ago, we found they called the sheriffs. My father was out there, and he found an illegal that had died. And Border Patrol came down, Texas Rangers came down, everybody came down there, and they say, well, this is happening up and down.
Yeah.
And I understand why they're immigrating.
Of course.
We live in the best country there is in the world.
I agree.
So that sends us to our first question. How will you change, or what will you bring to the table to change the immigration problem? What's your idea of what has to happen?
Correct. So, Paul, I think we have to understand the problem. I'm a businessman by nature. So we have to understand the cause and why we can't move out of this. You're right, we've had immigration problems for a while, but it's never been this bad. If you look at the charts of the captured, it's average around 50,000 a month. Well, in July of this year, we captured 200,000 illegals. Now, when I speak to the Border Patrol, they said, look, we're only capturing roughly a third. That means 600,000 people per month. That's over 7 million people coming into this country on a yearly basis. that's overwhelming our population. We're 300 million, and there's 7 million coming in every year. And that's the difference. The difference is we've seen a dramatic surge in straining the systems that normally will handle immigration. For example, the immigration courts. Well, when you have 50,000 people coming in, you can process them. We have capacity. But when you go up to 200,000 people per month, now you've got to build, first of all, processing facilities, and you're seeing being built along the border. There's one right here outside Laredo on 83. You go straight down the border, and they're building them to keep up with this incredible surge. And so it's putting pressure on local communities. You brought up the issue. I was up in Hebronville, one of the counties within my district, Jim Hogg County.
Sure.
And they're seeing 10 dead immigrants a month. And the problem is that they have to go out there and categorize it, just like you mentioned. Justice of the Peace has to go out there, people show up to process them. Then they have to take them and send them to a Laredo funeral home, who then has to build the box, $2,500. The state doesn't pay the local community. And then they have to go get a plot to put them down, because that's the humane, the right thing to do. And then they have to pay somebody to dig the ditch. It's not huge sums of money, for some community it is. For a place like Jim Hogg, Hebronville, it's significant impact on the budgets. Forget about the hospitals. I mean, when they have COVIDs or health issues and sending them out there. It is a tremendous strain when you have a surge of this magnitude. Education, police, are just under a tremendous amount of duress. What do we need to do? We have to understand the problem. What's the problem? Is you have money and power that's keeping us from addressing the fundamental issues of immigration. What do you mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is you have the congressmen along the border towns who are, if their special interests. A perfect example is Henry Cuellar. One of his biggest donor is a company called Geo Group. Well, Geo Group is one of the largest private prison operators in the country. So how much can Henry do when he's being supported and funded for his re-election? Every 2 years he's up for re-election. He needs the money to beat people like me, people that are running against him. So he's basically addressing the need of special interest, not the community. So career politician is a serious problem. We need term limits. That way these congressmen don't become dependent on special interests to fund the re-election every 2 years. So one of the things we have to do is understand, how do we address the politicians that are they tell you what the problems are, but they don't give you solutions, or they don't implement the solutions. The second issue I think that's important is a lot of these immigrants are coming over, and Washington views them as future Democratic voters. And if you look at 1986, the amnesty program that was implemented, unfortunately, by Ronald Reagan, a significant portion of those 3 million people that took advantage of the amnesty and went down the path of citizenship, a vast majority of those became Democrats. So the Democrats don't want to address it. The congressmen don't want to address it. They're Democrats, and they're being funded by special interests. On the other side, you have a huge industry that's created, right? The drug cartels have been drug trafficking into America for a long time. Suddenly they see, we can charge these immigrants $5,000 or enslave them, have them pay once they arrive here, drugs, the sex industry. It's a big industry. When you capture 200,000, when you're doing 7 million immigrants every year at $5,000 roughly each, that's a $35 billion industry. Great diversification. If I'm the drug cartel, I'm thinking, hey, I'm making money in drug trafficking. Human trafficking is almost the same. I can diversify into that, and they're taking that huge profit they're making and pumping it into the Mexican political system. Mexico has become a narco state. They don't have an interest in helping. The drug cartels don't have an interest in changing anything. On the U.S. side, there's no one interested. So we have to, as citizens, we have to understand the problem, the causes of, and the reason why we haven't addressed immigration the proper way. So we put term limits for the congressman. You're in for 2 terms and you're out, just like the president. You actually give the resources. We need a wall in selected areas. There's huge inflows in certain areas of the border. We need to put up a wall, because the key to immigration is you must keep them on that side of the border. Once they set foot in America, we are a country of laws in due process. So what happens is they raise their hand and say, I'm a political refugee, or I'm a religious refugee. We must give them the opportunity to prove their case. the immigration system or the judges, we don't have a judicial system that can process that many people. So the key is keep them on that side. Anything that we can do to keep them from setting foot in America and ask for due process, it's going to help the system absorb. So we must provide a wall. We must provide technology. You know, we have the greatest industrial military complex in the world. We have some of the best weapons, and our veterans will tell you, we have the best weapons in the world. Why can't we shift that technology and that knowledge and admit the fact that we're in a war? We're being invaded. 7 million illegals every year at the rate that we saw in July. And let's use that technology, that knowledge, and convert that complex to focus on the issue of the border and bring technologies that can address some of the problem and help the Border Patrol that's overwhelmed. It's like a dam, and you plug one hole and they find out that down the line there's another hole. Perfect example is if you go to Zapata, you have Falcon Lake. Well, they took down the blimps on Falcon Lake. Or they're going to build antennas. Well, there's no antennas. So what's happening now is they're shifting. The drug cartels realize there's no eyes on the lake, and they're bringing people on boats across. Same thing. Wherever you plug in one hole, another hole opens up. And the drug cartel, remember, they're funded with huge sums of capital. And they are very sophisticated, and they're starting to filter across the border. That's what's disconcerting to people like myself, right? If you go to STAR, a significant number of people were indicted by the FBI because they were working with drug cartel.
Absolutely.
Law enforcement, judges, business people. It's beginning, the problem that we see in Mexico where corruption and the drug cartel takes over the political system is already occurring. It's occurring first in the weakest counties, the poorest county, the impoverished counties. But over time, you're going to see it spread, and we have to stop that. We have to stop that now.
You know, those are you made some excellent points, and the points that I see here is number one. We've had both Democrat as well as Republican congressmen sitting down there that they've never touched base. They never did anything about the immigration laws. We've had an overwhelming Republican Congress with Trump and other presidents, and they never did anything as well. So I think term limits is needed. We need checks. We need checks and balances. Number one, I think the term limits are needed as per se. Now, what in immigration we've had way so many little loopholes that come in and so on and so forth that we need to start plugging away and start changing and start manipulating that system. But it comes from the local municipalities as well, okay? And it's the local municipalities that want walls, that want to bring this down. It's like Laredo, Laredo didn't want a wall.
Right.
Laredo was saying that they had no crisis. Right. All of a sudden, in July, bingo, there's a crisis, and all of a sudden they're backpedaling that they've always wanted one, and so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying? So you had certain ones in there, but when all in all, they passed a resolution that they didn't have a crisis.
Yeah.
Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we need to understand that immigration is a problem. It's always been a problem. Number one. Now, that's a key point. But you got some good thoughts, and you have some great ideas to coming on board. But before we can get in there, you got a couple of races before you.
I do. Yes, sir.
Okay, I mean, you have a race in the Republican side against Sandra Whitten, which I believe she's a very nice lady. Then you have on the Democrat side, you have Congressman Cuellar, and then you have Ms. Jessica Cisneros, and I believe there's a third. But who would you rather run against? Would you rather run against Jessica Cisneros or Congressman Cuellar? Who would you say would be the better opponent for you, and what are your thoughts?
Well, look, Paul, I think the issue to me is I'm not worried about the competition. What I'm worried about is how do I help my community? And that's been my whole focus. I'm not going to play the game. If you look at our Facebook page, you'll see I'm out there talking to the people and trying to find out what are the issues that people are struggling with, right? Once you get to Congress, I'll address the immigration issue. I'll address jobs. I'll address family values issues, which are the three platforms that I really stand for.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, people get up in the morning and they have their own particular issues.
Absolutely.
So once you get a sense in a community, what is it that the community is in need of? For example, Zapata doesn't have an emergency facility. So if you have a heart attack, you better hold on until you get to a hospital in Laredo, an hour away.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why does a community of that size not have some federal clinic or something that's open 24/7 to help in a situation like that?
But you know, it goes back, and you have a you have a great answer. But it goes back to the municipalities. You know, the commissioners in Zapata. It goes back to the representatives in Zapata. It goes back to the city council of Zapata and the mayor of Zapata and Benavides to say, you know what, we're lacking this. So if they're back there nonchalant, thinking everything's okay, hunky dory, they're never going to ask for something like that from above. You know what I'm saying? So I think the feelers have to be out there. And have to be going out there, which I believe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, well, they never told me, but you know, they're the ones that are needing it over there. How do I know that my like this? How do I know that my grandma needs bread, needs food if I never visit her? But when you go there and you're always on top of things, and she never tells you, you have to. You know what? You have to be the nosy grandson and look inside the refrigerator and say, you know what, Grandma, I need to bring you some food.
I think the greatest skill that a politician needs is the ability to listen.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people have forgotten that. They're running because of the fame and fortune and the power that comes with a position.
Sure.
And they've forgotten the reason why there's a political system. It's really to address the needs of your constituency, your voters. But the system has been perverse over time, and we have so many glitches in the system, political system, that people kind of forget. And I'm trying to keep my eyes on the prize. And first and foremost, talk to people, find out what their needs are, and understand, and find out why it's not addressed. Zapata, right? They have a fire station in Zapata that has black mold. And they went 10 years ago to Henry Cuellar and to the county commissioners, said, listen guys, we're putting our lives on the line. We have to sleep here for 24 hours, and there's black mold coming out of the vents. I have photographs on my Facebook page. And for 10 years they've waited for the politicians to respond. The county commissioners passed a salary increase that could have easily paid for the repair of that fire station. They were reversed because the community rose up and said, no, you ran and you knew what your salary were. We're having COVID issues. The oil industry, which is very big in Zapata, is no longer booming like it used to be. No, it's not acceptable. And they reversed that increase. So the politicians sometimes are deaf. They don't listen to the community. And I think we have to hold politicians accountable.
They have to be accountable. I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. And when you look, and when you're telling me that, you're like, the commissioners knew that they had bad mold. It's a firehouse from Zapata. The commissioner should have been on top of that like from day one. Right. And they were not. They were greedy. Right. And that's what you say is we have to have accountability. We have to hold people accountable for the stuff that went on. I'm a small businessman. I'm an entrepreneur, if you want to put it in that sense. I have other businesses, and I've been seeing how the small businesses here in Laredo have been closing due with the pandemic or due with the mandates of the pandemic. Okay? And when you look at that, and it's kind of like, who cares really what happened to you, but we're going to have a kite day for you guys. Come on out here and take a picture with your favorite councilman because we're having a kite day, and here's a pumpkin. You know what I'm saying? That has nothing. You guys destroyed small businesses. You understand what I'm saying? So where's the accountability? Somebody has to pay for that. And I think that's going to happen in the elections. I said that last year. It's going to be very hard for the incumbents to come up, and 2 of them will remove from city council. I believe it's going to be very hard next year as well. And I think some politicians all of a sudden woke up and said, geez, you know what, there is trouble. Yeah. And I think, and I'm going to give credit to where credit's due, okay? And Congressman Cuellar has been bringing in a lot of money to a lot of organizations that have been busting the rear for many years up and down the valley, something that I have never seen before. And I think, they woke up and they said, you know what, these people need the money, and that leads me to this. And then I found out that, he's head of appropriations, bringing down millions of money to this area. You get elected. you go in. Are you going to be the head of the appropriations committee or not? How does that work? Can you explain?
The way it works is, if the Republicans take the House, he would no longer be in the appropriations, involved in the appropriations committee. It's the governing party that has the influence in the appropriations committee. Much of what he highlights as having, he worked for it, he didn't work for it. Those are federal agency decisions done. The transportation decides where the money goes, and it gets sent through the system, and the appropriations committee looks at it. Now, he's gotten smart. He's running scared. What happened last time, he almost lost to Jessica by 3,000 votes, a newbie, a new neophyte in politics.
Sure.
And she came 3,000 votes away. If that doesn't shock you as an incumbent, nothing will. So this time around, he realizes he better go back and pay attention to his constituency. And he thinks that by giving money away, that's going to be the solution. I don't think so. I think eventually it's about empowering people, giving people the opportunity, small businesses, individuals, bringing in good paying jobs. We're losing our young. The talents in the border towns are all leaving. My nephews, my nieces, they go to UT Austin or they go to Texas A&M, they're not coming back. Because I just dropped one off in Seattle, Washington. He's working for Microsoft. He couldn't find those kind of jobs down here.
Absolutely.
Don't give me a fish. Show me how to fish so I can eat forever, right? With a fish I can only eat for one day. I prefer to teach you how to fish so that you can eat forever. And that's not the strategy that Mr. Cuellar is using. He wants to give grants. It's usually relatively small money. It's allocated for federal agencies. Listen, if he really cared about his community, he was born in Zapata. I hate to bring up Zapata over and over again, but he was born in Zapata. The house, 10 years ago, they asked him for it. $500,000. Tell me that $500,000 is tough to get through the system. He's not paying attention to his community. He's got a bunch of interns in Washington looking over anytime any money passes through the Appropriations Committee, which has to, from a federal agency, he takes credit for it. That's not what the community needs. They need people championing the needs of this community. He's been the head of appropriations. He can't even get $500,000 for Zapata. You know what? McAllen, during his term, has built 3 bridges. How many have we built in the last 16, 17 years of Cuellar? 0 here in Laredo. How can that be?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, but there's something about the bridges. You know, they want to bring a bridge down, but there's a bond that I spoke with some of the folks that were involved with the bridge 10, 15 years ago. And I was sitting down with them and I said, you know, how is it possible? How come we can't get another bridge going? They were talking about bonds. They say when the last bridge was built, it had to be at 80 to 85%, I believe those are the numbers, before the federal government would release another bridge to the side. Now, if you wanted to build one beforehand, you had to pay something like $50 million in bonds. You think Laredo has $50 million? No, it does not. Not to spend. You know what I'm saying?
McAllen solved the problem, and that's outside his district.
But McAllen has been eating Laredo's lunch for a very, very long time. Okay? And you know that. And what happens is, you know, I sat down with some agencias aduanales, you know, import-export companies, some owners here that were from Mexico, they live here and so on and so forth. And they were all sitting down and they introduced me to them and I was sitting down with them and we're talking back and forth. And I knew one of them. I had gone to school with one of their kids. And out of those 10 individual companies, 6 had already moved to San Antonio. I remember 2 were moving to McAllen. One of them didn't know what was going to do, and the other one said he might just go bankrupt. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what's going on in Laredo. McAllen, hey, thumbs up for McAllen because they have been eating our lunch for a very long time.
If a congressman is not the head of the Appropriations Committee or involved in the Appropriations Committee, he's a Democrat. Okay. How come they're getting the resources and getting things done, and supposedly a very powerful politician here is not taking care of his hometown?
And you know here's where I'm going to differ from you, and I hate to, and it's not a debate or anything, but I'm going to differ, and the reason I'm going to differ is because McAllen, the commissioners in McAllen, the city council in McAllen, has been for many years. Let me tell you this: I did a seminar, a kick punch seminar, teaching people how to punch other people in the face. And we were in Reno.
We need that in Washington.
And it was in 2003, and I was in Reno, and there was a robotics convention, and the same in Circus Circus, and we walked in there, and since we were in one, we can walk into any of the other ones. And me and one of the instructors said, hey, go check this out. So we walked in there, and we were walking around. We saw robots from all different types. So manufacturing robots who printing stuff that were throwing out cement. They were all robotics. And in the very end, you had a booth, McAllen, giving out leaflets for businesses looking to go to McAllen. Laredo, you don't see Laredo doing that. I mean, this is 2004. So McAllen has been marketing McAllen for a very long time. They knew what to do back then. They had some smart individuals going in there, and that's just the way it is. Some people are going to get ahead of the ball game and so on and so forth, but we can't say, this is a senator did this or the congressman did that. No, that's McAllen doing that.
The bridges are a federal project.
Sure, but
managed and funded by the federal government.
Understood.
That is the domain of the congressman like Cuellar or Vicente Gonzalez
Sure.
or whatever Democrat congressman there is. You're right that they're better marketers, but who can lead that? It's like the border crisis. The border crisis, we need leadership.
Right.
And the leaders should come from the communities that are suffering, right? Dallas doesn't really care that much, or there's not the
They don't understand what's going on.
Exactly.
And that's
But
what
we
happens.
do know here, and we need leadership. It's not going to come from local. It's going to come from the federal level.
Absolutely.
The
It's
most
like-
powerful politicians
it's-
for this district.
And I'm gonna put it to you this way: in the United States, you have the right for a well-regulated militia. Under a second, are they gonna stand up and go patrol the bridges and patrol the frontier? They can't, because what the federal government's gonna say, we're in charge of this. Understand what I'm saying? Even though they have the right to do so, they're gonna say we're in charge of it. And right now, we have agencies and departments on our federal government. This goes back to checks and balances, and when are we gonna put people together, and when are we gonna actually hold people accountable?
Right.
This crisis, the Border Patrol knew about it, ISIS knew about it, everybody knew the whole thing was coming, and it's still being thrown at us.
Right.
And that's one thing, immigration. More important, people, I want a well education we need for better schools.
Like,
We need taxes to go down, so I don't know how we're gonna do it for that to go down, especially with this pandemic. They should have been thinking about that. You have a lot of families that don't have money. They've been out of work for so long, they're gonna be losing their houses left and right. We have some way to put a stop to the taxes, to the taxation. That's number one. And if you all can figure it out, then that's the best thing to do.
well, listen, the issues that you bring up about economics, you either increase the revenues or cut expenses. How do you increase revenues? Well, create jobs, create growth. Help your small businesses. Where are jobs created across the country? It's not the IBMs or GEs of the world. They're the new emerging growth companies and small
Absolutely.
businesses. So let's help deregulate. It is so difficult to start, fund, and grow a small business. And that's what we need. That's what I'm saying about let's create the jobs that we need in this community. Let's encourage the small business. That's where the job opportunities are. Let's bring in quality companies down here by cooperating federal, state, county, and local, and work together, just like they're doing up in the Northeast. In the Northeast, you go to New York City, and you've got the Congressman Schumer, you've got the county people, you have the state people working with the city to try to encourage Amazon to locate in Brooklyn. Why can't we here work together to create that? Because our friend Cuellar is busy with special interests in his limo and having a fancy dinner, and that's been his focus. Now he's woken up because he almost lost. Now he has to pay attention to the community, but he lost sight of what really got him there. What got him there, he cared about the community. He spent time really addressing the issue of the community. He's not doing that. He's not providing the leadership. So you can argue all you want, but the bottom line is the border crisis is still here. It's worse than it's ever been. He's been in power for 16 years. We are some of the poorest zip codes in the country. He's had 16 years to fix that problem. We have some of the highest percentage of the population on welfare in the country. He's had a chance to address that issue. So you can argue about details, oh, well, that's control here or there, but he has to provide the leadership. He has to be, they always say, where does the buck stop? it's got to stop with your local your representative. And the federal level is the highest that you really have with your best interest at heart, and it's just not happening. So what I'm saying is, he's lacking the leadership, and I know why, because he's focused in the Washington swamp addressing the money issue so that he can continue to be a congressman. This is his career. I already had my career on Wall Street. I already made my fame and fortune. I'm trying to help the community. I want 4 years. I want to run hard, implement the changes that I need, and then bring in a young person that can basically implement his own ideas and continue to move the community forward instead of backwards. You know, you can't justify 16 years, what you just described, and then you're comparing it to McAllen. Something has gone wrong here, and you can't avoid that as a 16-year incumbent.
But I'm not blaming Laredo's issues on him. I'm blaming Laredo's issues on the leadership Laredo, the municipality, has had. Not the county, not the state, because they've all helped Laredo. Laredo by itself has been digging the hole by itself.
Correct.
So I'm holding them responsible.
system.
Understand what I'm saying? It's a system. So I'm not going to put, because he can bring all the money, the congressman can bring in the money to Laredo. And where is it? ¿Me entiendes lo que te digo? You know what I'm saying? I can give McAllen or Zapata, here you go, 10 million, and all of a sudden you see everybody with a fishing boat out in Falcon Lake. You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden the fire station's still gonna have mold. It's still, you know what I'm saying?
Well, listen,
But you know what
I'm biased. My point, another point I want to make is, if you look at Laredo, if you look at Zapata, if you look at Stark County, where I spend a lot of time in, the Democrats, local, federal, has been Democrat control for 40, 50, 60 years.
For many years.
Right. And the issue is, how's that working out? It's not working out. So here I am, I'm biased, obviously I'm a Republican,
Sure.
but maybe people should take a look and say, hey, maybe it's time for change. And let's try, the Republican side. And you know what? I think what you've seen in the last 10, 20 years is that the population here, a lot of their values have shifted to the Republican, the conservative side, and the Democratic Party has shifted to the left, and the community has shifted to the right. Listen, Trump won Zapata. Look what he did here in Laredo. Something has happened, and if you look at the conservative values, they really mirror a lot of what Latinos believe in, right? Familia, right?
Sure. I agree with you 100% with that. I don't think those values ever change. Those are the same values my grandmother had, and my uncle had, and my father has, and everybody else has. What happened here in Webb County, and I'm going to put Webb County in Laredo in a different little balloon, is that let's vote for so-and-so, he's my primo, he's your friend, he's going to be out there, let's vote for him, all of a sudden you get him inside, and ends up being somebody that you didn't want there. Now you can't get rid of him. So we do need term limits throughout.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Throughout, that's number one. But we can't blame, because you bring money. If you get two people, you got a bunch of people here, and all of a sudden they give you $1 million, they give me $1 million, and then this guy goes to Las Vegas and blows it, and you end up opening up a business, and now open up a couple of apartment complexes. It depends on the person.
Well,
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So I'm talking because I like it.
On Wall Street, I'm an investment banker for a long time.
That's what I want to talk about.
And they say that money is different shades of green.
Sure.
And my problem is the money he's bringing in. First of all, there's allocation. Those are federal allocations for all the different communities.
Sure.
So the question is, how much more could he brought in if he actually focused on the need of the community, instead of basically watching things through appropriations? They'll say, oh, that's coming to Zapata, I'm going to go send the check, or that's going to Laredo, I'm going to go ahead and claim that I did this for them. He's not focusing on the needs of the community, and that's my concern. But the shade issue is he's bringing entitlements, he's bringing money, he's not bringing opportunities, and he's not empowering the people, he's not empowering the community, right? There's his check, great. He's got $20,000 for the courthouse, to repair the courthouse in Stark County. Great. How's that going to put food on the table for someone in Stark County? How's that going to change the dynamics of that community that's being overrun by the drug cartels because it's impoverished, right? It's not. It's a different shade of money. It's not the right money that we need to get out of the hole and get ourselves away from being some of the poorest counties in the country. We need change.
Absolutely. But I understand where believe me. And let's talk about that Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Being Wall Street, that means you probably lived in New York, right?
I did. Yes, correct, in Manhattan.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how you're going to use your knowledge that you got in that business element,
Correct.
and how you're going to bring it here and how that's going to change the dynamics.
Good question. Actually, I was a winter Texan while I was living in New York. My wife is from the Valley. She grew up there, Maria Luisa. We've been married 37 years. When I met her in 1983, one of the requirements was that we, remain in the Valley. I was fortunate that I was sent to Harvard Business School. I graduated from Harvard. I love finance. It's my passion. I love numbers. I love the dynamics of Wall Street. It's a swamp. It's actually a cesspool. The swamp is in Washington. The cesspool is on Wall Street. And people always said they were surprised that, I did so well despite my faith. And I keep telling them that I actually did well because of my faith. I've always followed the Lord's light and keep my integrity. And focus was really important. I think what I bring to the table is very unique. I did Latin America for Merrill Lynch for a decade.
Okay.
I was, during the 1990s, I was going into Mexico, talking to presidents, talking to top business people. I worked in Argentina. I worked in Brazil. I had staff down there, Chile, Peru, and Venezuela. I was there when the AD and the COPE were fighting between themselves before Hugo Chavez came out of the woodwork. And suddenly he was going to solve all the country's problems. And he started to implement a lot of the policies we're seeing here. The enlargement of government, right? Regulation, entitlements, basically making the people dependent on him. The poor became dependent on the government with handouts and entitlements. And over time, he took over and began to, like we're seeing here, a lot of the local, voting is local, but a lot of those decisions they're trying to push it up to the federal level. So there is a concerted effort with a lot of the policies by the Democrats to consolidate power and to shift to more socialist policies. Perfect example is what's happening in Laredo. One of the candidates is being funded by AOC and Bernie Sanders in the far left.
And we'll talk about her in a minute.
Correct. So there's a concerted effort to embed liberal policies, not just political, but also moral and religious values. And listen, I'm a man of strong faith. If you turn over your dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." This is God's country, and a lot of the policies from these transgender to critical race theory is disconcerting to people of faith. The rights of the unborn, the right to worship. My father used to play dominoes with his compadres, and he used to always have his favorite dollar next to him. It was his lucky charm. And people would say, "Oh, you're a greedy Cuban." And he would say, no, and he would smile. And one day I sat down with him and I said, "Dad, why that dollar?" He said, "Flip it over. It says, 'In God we trust.'" This is God's country. I couldn't worship for almost a decade in Cuba, and I finally can feel the warmth of my congregation. I can finally preach the word. And that is so critical. People don't realize the efforts being done. They're trying to remove the tax, advantages of church, right? They're tax-free. If you get too involved in politics, they are going to challenge you and remove that tax-free component of a church. You're seeing so many issues that are questioning and undermining faith in our society, and that's so critical to maintain that. So there's a lot of reasons why, but the same thing happened in Venezuela. I saw it. When I was in Merrill, I was working with the business community, and I saw the slow slippage, and then suddenly accelerated before people realized they were leaving Venezuela. And look at the mess it is right now.
Absolutely.
And the only way they're going to get out of it is with guns. Unfortunately, where I was born, Cuba, it's an island. It's a prison. And on an island, it's hard when the government controls all the weapons and the population can't. That's why you saw the recent protests all over the country. They have no guns. There's no way they're going to be able. They need assistance. And the question is, they voted in, these policies, and now they have to get out of it. And it's hard to come up with a solution. As Americans, we don't want to be involved in foreign land in trying to address the issues there, but we don't want it to come here. And that's, I think, what I learned
Absolutely.
By working in Latin America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry for interrupting. And that fiasco that was, listen, the United States has always been the one that stops the bully.
Right.
The guy that goes out there and stop bullying the other person, we're going to bully you, And look at the fiasco that happened in Afghanistan. That's not so long ago.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and talking to a lot of people that happened, and a lot of people are mad about everything else, and they feel that, it was just a fiasco. It's the biggest, weakest, most cowardless thing that we ever did.
Right.
Understand? So, socialism is knocking on our door. Okay?
Yes, I agree.
Right, and what happened with the Democratic Party? Well, you have Democrats, moderate Democrats, and you have socialist Democrats, and you have some far left communist Democrats,
Right.
And of course we have our own on the Republican side. You have some, then you have some far right. And the extremists are the ones we have to be careful about. It's the rest that we can deal with. And talking with that, what happens with AOC's candidate here? And with Jessica Cisneros, a lot of people say she's funded by AOC. She's funded from that. Is she really? Is she part of that clan? And what happens if you go up against her? What's your point of view on that?
Well, look, I think you have to let the voters decide. I think the money is coming from Washington. You can see in the Federal Election Commission how she's funded, and obviously she caught lightning in a bottle. I mean, she ran at a time where Beto O'Rourke, another leftist, basically was running, and
Sure.
she was at the right place at the right time and almost blindsided Henry Cuellar. And I sincerely believe that those 3,000 votes were actually Republicans that were petrified of having Jessica win, and then our candidate, the Republican candidate at the time, not being able to beat her. So I think there is I would be surprised if she wins, because I don't think she's in tune with where the values are for the community. I think a lot of those anti-Cuellar votes, a significant portion of her base, I believe, comes from people that have been wronged or they feel wrong toward Cuellar. So I can't believe the community here, knowing what I know and going block walking in South Laredo and talking to hardcore Democrats that will tell you they've been Democrats for generations. I don't think that base is very broad. I think the anti-Cuellar base is very broad, and I think they've aligned themselves in order to knock him out as a politician. What I'm trying to do is provide an alternative, a viable candidate to beat Henry. If he does win, I would be the next one up. And so I think I would be surprised if she can beat Henry. And Henry was blindsided last time. He has spent 10 years now worrying about the vote down in this area. And suddenly this young lady, 26 years old, never been a politician, being funded from a leftist, being funded in a community that it's moved away from that. She never believed until the end what would happen. And this time around, he's spending some time, he's doing his photo ops, he's making sure that he's visible down in this community. But what happened with those 10 years when you didn't have competition, when you weren't running scared? And I think it's good for the community that he's running scared. At least he's paying attention to his constituency for the first time in a long time. What happens when he doesn't have competition, Republican or Democrat? What happens? He's going to slinker back to being what he was for over 10 years, worried about special interests in the Washington swamp and the lobbyists that are taking care of him, giving the private jets and the high-priced dinners and the limousine rides. And we've got to change that, right? You have 4 years, get it done, and move on. Let somebody else come in with energy. Don't make these politicians depend on special interests to make sure that they keep winning. His strength is he's got a lot of cash, right? He is one of the top fundraisers in Washington. Well, how can you be one of the top fundraisers in Washington when your community is some of the poorest in the country? It doesn't jive unless you're selling out to the special interest.
Well, that's in your fight with whoever wins on that side is in November of next year.
Correct.
But in March, I guess, when is it going to be? When's the election? March, May?
Early voting supposedly is going to be January 15th, and then March 1st is the actual primary.
Didn't they move it back?
If the approval of the redistricting gets delayed, then it will be moved to different dates. If it gets approved by a certain date, it gets moved back to April 15th or whatever. But it looks like they'll get approval on the redistricting in time. I believe it has to be approved by November 15th, and then March 1st is the primary date.
Okay. Well, in March 1st, your first race is against Ms. Whitten. What are you going to separate yourself, being Republican, against another candidate? How are you going to say, you know what, choose me? You know what I'm saying?
I'm saying, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you have a popular
Listen, she
girl.
has experience. She ran 2 years ago.
last year.
Right, correct.
She's out there. So what's Ed going to say? You know what? This is what I'm going to do.
There's two things, I think. Good question. And I think it's important for people to realize. First of all, you need to know what the community wants. Well, Laredo's 90-some% Hispanic. I can speak the language. She can't. So how can you communicate and absorb? Some people want to communicate with you in Spanish, right? They feel much more comfortable speaking Spanish. Yes, the official language in America is English, but some people just feel comfortable communicating their emotions and their needs in Spanish. So I can listen to them. I can empathize with them. I can develop ideas from what they're saying. Someone that can't speak the language has a hindrance, right? I think the second thing I bring, besides being Spanish speaker, Latino, understanding the culture in this area, is the fact, my experience, right? I've been a rancher, right? I'm a maquiladora executive. I've been a Wall Street investment banker, right? I've been an immigrant. She doesn't have any of those. And I think, and I'm old, right? I'm 61 years old. She's a young lady. I think experience is invaluable, right? Having worked on Wall Street and dealing with the sharks on Wall Street, it's going to be a different environment, but it's the same concept. You have to know how to manage the politics in Washington, and that's what I was able to survive on Wall Street for 35 years, and I was a managing director. So I can execute, and I think that background is invaluable to get results for the community. And that's what it's about at the end of the day, right? You've got to understand what the community needs and then usher and lead. And that's the key issue, lead those resources from wherever. Private industry. Listen, you want to relocate? You're going to Austin. Tesla is moving to Austin. And Elon Musk is interviewed. He said, well, they're moving there because real estate is too high and taxes are too high and the commute is too long. Well, they're moving to Austin. Guess what? Austin has become the liberal headquarters in Texas, and same policies that drove them out of California are being implemented in Austin. Move 3 hours, 4 hours south, right? You have a much broader labor force, cheaper labor. You have infrastructure. You have better weather, right? And if we can get the community to cooperate, we can give the same incentives that somebody like Austin can provide. So we've got to really work hard to, and somebody needs to lead, and that's the problem I see in the community. There's no leadership, there's no local leadership, everybody's out for themselves. There's no federal leadership, and you can argue how much money he brings in. I would tell you that if there's somebody else in there that cared about the community, not only would they bring more money, but it would be money that's needed, not money because it just happened to be requested by a federal agency.
Understood. And and I'm glad that you mentioned that about people moving to Austin. Why are they moving to Austin? Because they should have been moving to McAllen or Laredo, and Laredo doesn't have the type of negotiation skills that our leaders lack.
Correct.
Only because you can make a good cheesecake and dress up in Halloween costume does not make you a good leader. Understand? Understand what I'm saying? And I'm not making fun of them. It's just negotiations. You have to be able to negotiate with somebody. And you got some folks out there that are sharks. And you said that, you were inside there with the Sharks, and you did well. And McAllen has been promoting McAllen for the longest time, But everybody that I see in McAllen is working for McAllen. Everybody that I see here in Laredo it's me, me, me. You know what? Hey, it's me. You see me?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? It's not, let's do this for Laredo. Let's bring this to Laredo. And when you do bring something or an event or a how can I say, a business and so on and so forth, the whole community should get behind it.
Correct.
And right now, like I say, and I say it again, we're in dire straits.
Okay.
We need to wake up. And then some of the leaders that we've elected are snapping up and waking up. And listen, if this happens now and you can wake up and continue moving forward and pull us out of this, Godspeed and God power behind it.
Absolutely.
Understood? But other than that, it's kind of like, gee, what are we going to do? That's why I'm glad that you came over and glad that you talked and glad that you explained to folks, because people do not know who's running against who.
Correct.
Okay, they don't know who Jessica is only but what is said on Facebook. Understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I think people need to come out and get to know their candidates.
And that's how you hold politicians accountable.
Yes.
Educate yourself. Learn about the different candidates. See who actually represents you. And then watch your actions, right? Now, obviously, that's one way. The second way is the media. And unfortunately, the media, because of the fragmentation of the media industry, it's becoming harder and harder. People are taking sides instead of trying to choose the best candidate. It bothers me when the chairperson for the Democratic Party calls Republicans stupid.
Understood.
It's about working together to help the community. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. It's about what does the community need, and let's work together. Let's go across the aisle and talk to them and work with them. It doesn't really help the community by calling each other names, and that's what's really frustrating.
And and that brings to my next question. When let's say you're elected, okay? Guess what? You have to work for the Democrats that were against you. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to go over there and, you know what? Here's my hand. Are you going to be able to deal with bipartisanship and so on and so forth, or how? Right. Or is it going to be just Republican my way, or?
No, I'm not that way. That's not how I was taught. And the reason it doesn't work that way is because we have to keep an eye on the prize. First and foremost, the community. So I went to Jim Hawk. I met the judge, a Democrat judge. And I walk in, he says, I don't even know why we're meeting. I'm a Cuellar supporter. I don't see why I'm even talking to a Republican. And my point is, listen, I'm just here to find out about the community and figure out a way to help the community. What are the issues here? And if I become the congressman, how do I help you be successful and help this community? And within the first 10 minutes, you saw that he was able to work and it was open because he understood. He also had the community's best interests at heart. And what I have to do as the congressman is figure out who has the community's best interests at heart, whether you're Republican or Democrat, and those that don't. And then work and extend my hand and my help and my efforts to those that really are focused on the community. To me, that's the critical thing. And I am going to run across some Republicans that are just like a Democrat down here that are just self-interest. And I will, it will be difficult for me to negotiate with them because I know that's not their best interest. And it's their own best interest that they're looking out for. But that's what a smart politician would do, is try to figure out who are the good guys, who has the same interests as I have, which is to lift the community, empower the community, help them overcome the issue. That single mom that's worried about her child in the school system and what is he's learning, we have to focus on her needs, not about, hey, how much money do I need a salary increase? As a politician, it's self-interest. And why are you running? If you're a politician, why are you focused on your needs rather than the needs of the community? You shouldn't even run. And I think term limits will provide that check and balance. People that will realize this is not a career. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to help the community and get out. Is really the way to go. And I think we have to hold these politicians accountable. And it's my job to figure out the good guys from the bad guys and then work with the good guys. Whether Republicans or independents or socialists, I don't care. If they're going to help my community, I'll do whatever it takes to work out a deal with them, as long as it doesn't infringe on my values.
Absolutely. And the reason I say that is because the country right now is so far divided. Everybody's looking at each other. It's no longer about, I'm going to shake your hand. Now it's, I'm going to see how far I'm going to put my knuckles in you. And it's gotten to that point in many different areas. I mean, people are so far afraid of the other side that they are no longer able to embrace that American that's there. And we need to get people in there that say, you know what, let's start shaking hands, but we still live in this community. Let's start making this community go forward. We can't divide it anymore for else. I'm like this, and I've said it before. A Republican governor tried to kill my business. And we had a Democrat mayor that tried to do the same thing here in Laredo with a Democrat city council. So who do we trust?
Right. Correct.
Understand what I'm saying? Am I going to go block out all Republicans? And you have to understand each and every person that's out there and see and read through the lines and see who's actually doing something for the community and see who has a good heart and say, you know what,
Exactly.
let's do this.
Right.
And I tell folks out there that have lost races before, they disappear, and all of a sudden, the new election season comes around, and they're there with a flag again. No, you have to be busting your rear end in the community for people to see that you're actually doing something.
Yeah,
Understand?
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Listen, I raise money for Republican candidates.
Sure.
And the issue is that they share the same conservative values, but my focus wasn't whether you share my values only. I want to know what was in your heart.
Sure.
And if I felt as though you were doing this for the wrong reason, power, fame, whatever it might be, money, because you wanted a career, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. We got good Republicans. We got bad Republicans, just like we have the same on the Democratic side.
Sure.
And my interest is to really work with those that care about the community and have the same mentality in terms of what's in the best interest of my constituencies, right? They put me there. I work for the people, and we have to do the people's work, not our own work. That's what we were hired to do, and I think that's so critical, and we've lost that. And when you lose that, the system will collapse on itself, and that's how you end up as Cuba or Venezuela, and that's why it's really important and why I'm running.
Absolutely. Well, we'll leave that in that to the end, and I'm glad that you came out. And let's just keep on pushing forward. And folks, one thing I'm going to say, we're starting the election season for 2022. And you guys you all are the voters. You all are the folks that actually make the difference. And you all are the ones that need to actually understand who's who, who's what, who's where. And you all also have to have that same ability to say, you know what? I'm going to look at both sides, the Democrats, the Libertarians, and the Republicans, and say, you know what, this candidate over here, he's best for my community. You know what, this candidate over here, he's best for my community. And not be afraid of being able to scratch those votes, okay? Because we've made a lot of mistakes by just voting one party for a very long time. And now it's a time that the pandemic has woken a lot of people out.
Absolutely.
And until next time, much peace and stay tuned. Thank you.
Pleasure, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.